Let's tweet it out. Okay, live. So anyone who was scheduled to watch this recording earlier, I had one scheduled, but I logged in and it disappeared. So I've managed to get back online. Technical fault, but we're here. Let me just tweet this out, and then we'll get into the meat of the subject. Okay, so tonight got about 25-30 minutes to talk about LinkedIn and why and how to use LinkedIn to navigate the job market successfully. So bit of an intro. My name's Simon Gray. I run a business called Codex. I'm a chartered accountant, former professional recruiter, and spent 10 years in the recruitment industry, where I started to observe how people were behaving, what they were doing. And I decided to write a book. I wrote a book called Super Secrets of the Successful Job Seeker. And then more recently, this book, no advertising there, Super Secrets of Successful Executive Job Search. And I help senior executives move in the job market to help them define, find, and then secure the job they want. Tonight, I wanted to talk about one element of successful job search, which is LinkedIn. And this really hit home to me because I'd interview all these, it was finance recruitment I was in. I'd interview all these finance directors, and they'd come into my office, and I'd ask them, are you on LinkedIn? And they'd say, yes. And I'd say, well, what are you doing? And they'd look at me as if, what do you mean? What am I doing? And I realized that people really didn't understand how to use LinkedIn properly. But LinkedIn is hugely important. And it's one of the reasons I got my business started successfully back in 2008 as the financial crisis hit, because it acts as a website and a platform either to promote your business or your personal brand. So we're going to talk about two elements on LinkedIn tonight. We're going to talk about LinkedIn as a shop window, and we're going to talk about LinkedIn as a proactive engagement tool. And the proactive engagement tool tends to be the bit that most people miss. And the reason why we need to think about LinkedIn, or why if you're looking for a job you need to think about LinkedIn, is because it gives you access to something I call the hidden market. So what's the hidden market? Well, when an employer goes out to the marketplace to hire talent at whatever level, they don't always go and advertise on a job board straight off. And they don't always go and talk to a professional recruiter. What they do is they tend to talk to people they know. And they say to their peer group, their friends, who do you know who could perhaps do this, this, or this? And if they get nowhere, then they have a second conversation with their extended network, people they're in business with, people they know through the course of their business, their accountant, their lawyer, people they know from, I don't know, anyone that they know through their business network, people they've met at a networking event, and have another conversation. And they do this before they ever get to a job board or a recruiter. And they do it because they want someone to recommend somebody. And it's obviously a lower cost strategy, and it can be faster because if somebody happens to know the right person, well, you don't need to necessarily go through the whole recruitment process, because finding the people with the right skills and experience can be costly both in terms of time and money. So conversations 1 and 2 are the hidden market, and they are job opportunities that people don't often see unless they know the hidden market exists, because the majority of job seekers out there tend to look at job boards or register with recruiters and don't do too much else in my experience. So what LinkedIn has done, it's changed the game for everybody, because now employers are on LinkedIn looking for talent all the time. And being an ex-recruiter, I can tell you that all the recruiters are on LinkedIn and using it as an extra database to find the talent that they want to bring into their clients' businesses. So LinkedIn has given employers direct access to this hidden market, and they can see what somebody looks like. They can see what their skills and experience are. There's a recommendation there because there's recommendations on LinkedIn. So they have a bit of comfort about the person that they're engaging with, and they can contact this person directly without the need for an intermediary. So if you're in the job market at whatever level, it's really important that you're on LinkedIn, but you're on LinkedIn in the right way. So let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn as a shop window. And imagine you're a shopkeeper, okay? You got a shop in the high street, and what you need to do to attract people to come in, you need to dress the window. So the window needs to look appealing. And it needs to talk to your customer. So, imagine the retail space, you're running a clothing store. It's got to look nice. The clothes have got to look good. and you've got to have the right advertisements in the window to bring people in who walk past your shop. So LinkedIn is a shop window. There are certain things that you need to do. And these are the basic stuff, but quite often people get these things wrong. So the first thing you need to do is to have a great photo on there. And it needs to be a professional business photo. Not a photo of you in your spare time. That's for Facebook. This is a professional headshot, ideally with your eyes looking down towards the left, towards your profile. Because psychologically, when somebody lands on your profile, they will tend to follow your eye line, and it invites them to read the rest of your profile. Small tweak, small nuance, but actually quite important. You've got to have a smile on your face. So you've got to look inviting. You've got to look friendly, because then people are more likely to stop, come into your shop and find out what you're all about. The other thing you need is a professional headline. And there are two schools of thought on this, because should a professional headline be your job title, or should a professional headline tell people what it is you do? You know, and job title and what it is you do can be two different things. And you know, what you're called in a particular business might not mean anything to anybody in the outside world. It might be very specific to your organization. I opt for telling people in one very short sentence the things I do. So I help people in the job market, and I'm a non-executive director to recruitment companies, and I put that in my professional headline. So think about your professional headline and think, does it really give people an instant snapshot as to what it is you do and what you could potentially offer them if they're looking to hire people into your business? Now, on LinkedIn, the thing that supercharges your profile is your connections. Because if you don't have any connections, then you can't see people and they can't see you. So you're very limited in what you can do and who you can engage with. Because LinkedIn has first tier, second tier, and third tier connections. And the best way that I've come up with to describe this is it's a bit like that game at school. If you're my age group, in your 40s, you might remember this. I think kids still do it today. They play conkers. And if you've got a conker that's beaten 50 other conkers, and I've got one that's beaten 100, if you beat me, then your conker becomes 150. So you immediately benefit from my success in the conquering world, if you like. And it's the same on LinkedIn. So I have about 4,500 connections currently. So if somebody connects to me, then they become a second tier connection to my 4,500 connections, which means my 4,500 connections can see them. They become a first tier connection to me, but a second tier connection to my 4,500 connections. So if you connect to people that have got lots of connections, then you massively increase your visibility and your reach on the platform. And again, this is where people get into trouble, because certain people say, well, I'm not going to connect to anyone I don't know. Why would I? And other people say, well, I'll connect to anybody. And you've really got to think about, well, why you're on LinkedIn. If it's to find a job, then the chances of you knowing the person that's going to hire you in your next position are very, very slim. So I have a rule that says I'll connect to anybody that invites me to connect. But if they break that trust element and they start spamming me with emails trying to sell me stuff, then I'll just disconnect from them. So it's one of the reasons I built up, quite a large connection base. And I actually struggle now to find people on LinkedIn that aren't either first, second, or third tier connections with me. Even with 4,500 connections, you've got a worldwide reach to pretty much get to anyone you want to get to pretty much anywhere. So building connections is really important. And when you build connections, you have to do it on a daily basis. It needs to become a habit. One of the challenges people have with LinkedIn, and one of the reasons they go wrong in the job market, is they do a stop-start approach. So, okay, today I need to look for a job. I'm looking for a job, so I'm going to start using LinkedIn. Then I get a job, and then I stop using LinkedIn until the next time I need a job. So what's important is that you actively use LinkedIn consistently. So I pretty much every morning get up 6:30, kids wake me up 6:30, I go on LinkedIn, have a look who's on there, have a look who I want to connect to. And usually I've had some connections overnight, because as you build connections on LinkedIn, people will recognize you as a connector and want to connect to you, going back to the conquer thing I spoke about earlier, because they want your first tier connections to be their second tier connections. When you connect to people on LinkedIn, it's really important that you give them a personal message. So don't just send a connection request with the standard LinkedIn message, because people don't know why you're connecting. So when you create a message, you've got to make it personal. This is why you have to build LinkedIn one connection at a time. So, you send a message, dear such and such, came across your profile, like what you were saying. It would be a privilege to connect with you on LinkedIn. That's the line I use all the time, because it's saying, I really value your connection. And if you're looking for a job, it's best not to start off with, on LinkedIn, I'm looking for a job, can you help? Because people are not going to want to connect to you. So use something I call the job seeker dichotomy in my book, but use some knowledge about them. What are they talking about on LinkedIn? Have you seen something that they've said? Have they done a status update, a published post that you can comment on? And just say how much you enjoyed it, how much you appreciated it, and do it that way, because then you build some trust and some engagement with them. So talked a little bit about LinkedIn as a shop window. The other thing you need to think about with LinkedIn as a shop window, and this is a mistake that people make all the time, is what are your public profile settings? Because your public profile settings, which you'll find in the top right hand corner when you hover over your picture, will either say that you're just showing what you're talking about to your connections or to everybody. And if you're looking for a job, you need to be visible to everybody. You can also create a public URL. So a URL that has your name in it, maybe your job title in it. And you can use this in your signature on your email, which encourages people to connect to you on LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives you a standard one, which is a series of numbers. We've got somebody calling in. So we'll pause for a second and see who's calling in, see if anyone's got a question for me on LinkedIn. Okay, we've got Duncan on the line. Let's have a look and see if this works. Click anywhere to close the sidebar. Okay, so we might have somebody calling in with some questions. Let's have a look. I'm going to carry on while that happens, because nobody's in the room as yet. So let's talk a bit about how to use LinkedIn as a proactive engagement tool. And if you think about the shop window scenario, in fact, that's not working, so I'm just going to shut that down. If you think about the shop window scenario, then you've got your shop. It looks really good because on your profile you put all the text down and you made it look great. But actually now you need to look at LinkedIn as a proactive engagement tool. So get out of your shop, go onto the street, and actually invite people to come in and talk to you. And this is how you use LinkedIn proactively. Now, the way you use LinkedIn proactively is you start to converse, you start to have conversations, you start to share information and content. And if you think about how the modern marketing world works, it used to be that people would see stuff and then they buy it. But because we're all bombarded with marketing information nowadays, that doesn't work anymore. And we tend to disregard adverts and this, that, and the other. So there's this thing that I tend to call see me, like me, trust me, buy me. And what that means is before somebody wants to engage with you, they usually want to check you out first. And if you're on LinkedIn being quite active, so you're using things like status updates, published posts, which I'll talk about in a minute, people start to see the stuff that you're doing, like the stuff that you're doing, and start to trust some of the stuff that you're saying. And then they're more likely to engage with you. And there are a number of ways you can build this trust funnel on LinkedIn and be very proactive about what it is you do. And the first way is status updates. So status updates are an opportunity for you to communicate information about stuff that you think, your opinion on certain things relating to your industry sector or profession, or you can share other people's content, but you've got to make sure you've read it because people think it's yours or they'll think you agree with it. And one of the ways you do that, you go into Google Alerts, you set up a search so that people find, set up a search for your industry sector key buzzwords, and you'll get a daily email of content that you might want to share through your status updates. So, of course, I operate in the careers and employability space. 50% of the content I share is my own that I've created, like the content tonight. Okay, we've got a caller coming in. So let me see if I can work this out. Let's see if this works. I'm very poor. Hello.
Hello, Simon.
Hey, somebody I know. Hi, caller.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry, it might be noisy because I'm on my phone and my daughter's gymnastics. So
Hey, don't
sorry
worry.
if the noise is loud there.
Hey, don't worry, don't worry. It's good to see you online. I'm on a,
Yeah,
I'm,
and you.
I'm in a hotel room in London on a very poor speed, but I thought I'd give it a bash anyway. In fact, for anyone watching, Colin's the guy that introduced me to Blab, so I do owe you a debt of gratitude.
Hey, no, it's great to have you on there. And there's some great stuff that you were sharing, actually.
Thank
So
you.
I just, actually, I wanted to jump on and ask a question on it
Cool.
in terms of LinkedIn and the kind of how often you recommend people should update and post. I kind of went through a phase where I was doing once a day, and then I thought, is that too much? So I kind of did it once every other day. And then I now use the posting of articles quite a bit as well. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that. Yeah,
it's a really, really good question. And I think you've got to ask a supplementary question, which is what kind of content are you sharing? So if it's educational content, if it's relevant to your connections, I know you've got a business, a great speech company. So if it's useful content that helps people do their public speaking, then that's great. I tend to do a post every single day, at least one post every single day. And if it's not spammy, that's fine. The published post that you're talking about, which is one of the best ways to be proactive on LinkedIn because it establishes you as an authority in your industry sector, I tend to do those once a week or once every 2 weeks. And for those people watching, published posts is hugely important because LinkedIn has put those right at the top of the profile. And this is where if you're in a particular industry sector, you have an opinion, you communicate that opinion, and you're seen as a thought leader. In fact, one of my executive clients, Colin, he'd never done a published post at all. And this guy was a senior figure in the aerospace sector. And I said, just do a published post and share it. He's like, well, no one's going to read it. And he got so much engagement and people sharing it that it proactively shares your message wider than your original circle. So it's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, actually. What I'm also trying to figure out is I've seen some people's articles that get picked up by the LinkedIn Pulse, which then goes to, their hundreds of thousands of people. But I haven't seen anybody work out how to actually get your article picked up. I heard I was listening to a podcast today, actually, and somebody said you can tweet LinkedIn Pulse themselves because they've got a Twitter handle. And that perhaps is a way to get them to take notice. But I don't know if you if you know anything
I've not heard that, but I'll certainly try it. I think they keep those cards quite close to their chest. What I do know is that if you follow influencers on LinkedIn and an influencer picks up your post and shares it, that really helps to get your message out there. I've had a couple of I had one instance on LinkedIn. It was bizarre. I did this post. I think it was the post I did on. It was when Floyd Mayweather fought Manny Pacquiao, and I related that to the job market. And I think an influencer picked that up because within the space of a week, it was literally I get connection requests. I had them from. It started in Europe, and then it went to Asia, then it went to Australia, and then it came back. And I had probably 50 connection requests in a week just on that particular post. And I think it's because an influencer picked it up and shared it because they've got a huge reach. And you used to be able to apply to be an influencer on LinkedIn, but you can't. You have to be invited now. And I think it's based on the number of connections that you have, which is why one of the reasons it's important to build so many connections.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
How many connections have you got on LinkedIn, College, you know?
I think it's about 1,000,
okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't tell. Well, once you get to 500, it just says 500 plus, and I know there's some way you can see it.
Yeah.
But I also because it says things like you've got 1,100 followers, and I can't tell whether followers is the same as my connections. And I think some people can follow me without actually.
Yeah, this is a relatively new thing. So you've got connections, and they follow you because they're connected to you. But then, let's say I wasn't connected to you, but I like some of the stuff that you were doing. I can just follow your published posts. I can follow your feed. Right. So you tend to have it. Let me get this right way around. You've got more followers than you have connections usually, and I think there's a tipping point at around about 4,000 connections. I started to get loads and loads of connection requests on a regular basis. Yeah. Because I was explaining the Conquer thing earlier on. people see,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
this guy's got loads of connections. I need to connect to him because then I'll get second tier connections through him. The other thing I was going to talk about tonight was groups. Do you use groups on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I've kind of dipped in and out of being active. I was very active on a public speaking group. And that was really good for people sharing and so forth. But then actually what I then realized was I was active with kind of my fellow professionals, because all the people on there were public speaking consultants. And so although I was getting great engagement, I realized that it wasn't...
that's okay.
Sorry, that's my son.
That's what I'm usually doing. I'm in a hotel tonight. So
exactly. Exactly. Well, because I'm at gymnastics with my daughter's doing gymnastics. My son's just finished climbing, so he's now. Oh, can I play with the iPad? He's like, sure, go ahead. But yeah, so I dipped in and out. But what I found was it was great for engagement, but I wasn't sure it was that good for customers because the people on there were not really my customers. They were more kind of people interested in the topic because they were doing it as well. So I haven't yet, I don't think, found a group where I've had great interaction from people I would consider potential.
I've just lost you a bit there. I've lost a bit of sound. So hopefully you'll come back. Hopefully you can hear me, Colin. I'll talk a little bit about groups while you come back. So you're probably in the wrong group because if you're in a group with your peers, well, you're kind of preaching to the converted, if you like. So I'll tell you a little story about why LinkedIn groups are so important from the job market perspective, and it relates to the question you asked me. So in terms of the job market, if you're positioned in a group in your industry space and are engaging in that group, that means listening first and commenting and providing advice in that group, you're very likely to be picked up by recruiters and employers. I was given a number of years ago now, I always remember, I was given a really difficult job to fill by a large PLC company, manufacturing business, and it was an IT auditor. I mean, these are really difficult people to find. And I didn't have anyone on my database. So what I did, I went on to, what I'm going to do, Colin, I'm going to drop you out. And if you want to call back in, because I think we've lost each other. What I did on LinkedIn, sorry, my alert's going off here. What I did on LinkedIn, I went to here we go. I went on LinkedIn and I I'm getting confused now. There's too many things to do on Blab. I went on LinkedIn and I posted in this IT audit group and said, I'm looking to hire somebody in IT audit. I need this level of experience. And I had people firing names at me. And I connected with a number of people in that group. And ultimately, I placed this guy in a job. He's been there for 6 years. Now, if he wasn't on LinkedIn and he wasn't in the group in his industry space, I would never have found him and he wouldn't be where he was today. So as a job seeker, you've got to be on LinkedIn. You've got to be in the groups. From a business growth, from a business networking point of view, you kind of don't want to be in your sector group. You do if you're looking for a job. But for your purposes, you need to be in the group where your target customer is. So I would be in more general business groups. I mean, you know I do quite a lot of public speaking. And I know a lot of business people that I talk to are absolutely terrified of public speaking. So if you're in a group with business managing directors, chief executives, that's the place to be. I can't hear you, Colin. Can't hear you. Not sure what's happened to your volume. No, lost you. Type in the box if you want. We might hear that. You must be on a poor connection. So groups is really important. The other reason groups is important is I talked about the first, second, and third tier connections on LinkedIn. If you join a group that's got 10,000 members, you get what's called a group connection, which means suddenly you're visible to those 10,000 people and they're visible to you. So it's a really quick way that you can build your connection base. They're not first, second, third tier connections, but they're valuable people that you can then reach that can see you. So we were talking a little bit about published posts to establish yourself as a thought leader in your space. Once you've created your published post, share it in a relevant group. In the case of promoting your business, where your customer sits. In the case of the job market, if you're looking for a job market and you're in the, let's say you're in the tech sector, well, post your post in tech groups. That's the best advice. So you're getting it in front of the right people. I still can't hear you, Colin, but I can see you nodding, so I know you can hear me. There's so much stuff going on Blab for anyone watching who's not used it and controlled it. We've got a feed here, we've got people dialing in, and we've got a tweet and a Facebook integration on the side. So going to need to wrap it up in the next couple of minutes. If anyone is on and wants to ask me any questions about LinkedIn, any questions about job search, just drop something in the box or call in quickly. Got a couple of minutes, and I'll gladly answer anything that you want answering. What people think about that? A couple of things to mention. If you've liked what you've heard tonight and you're in the job market or thinking about getting into the job market, I do a lot of free content. I talked about See Me, Like Me, Trust Me, Buy Me earlier on. I believe that you build trust and engagement with people by putting out free content. So if you go to my website, careercodex.com, and you drop down to the bottom of the page, you can sign up for a newsletter, a free guide on how to think in the job market. 5 things successful people know that others don't about how to be in the job market. And of course, if you want to see what I think a good LinkedIn profile looks like, if you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, it's Simon Gray, Grayyaca, and I'll gladly connect back because we both build our networks as a result of doing that. And you'll see on my profile, as well as having regular published posts, I've got recommendations on there. So that gives a third-party assurance that I know what I'm talking about, know what I'm doing. And the other thing that I have on there, which I didn't mention earlier, which is about dressing your shop window, is I have articles where I've been quoted in the press. I've got an article I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I did a piece for Economy, a business magazine recently. And it just establishes you as a credible person, because if the press and media are asking you to comment on stuff and you've got that kind of stuff, then post it on your LinkedIn profile. You can use something called SlideShare integration to do that. You can even post video on there. So, I do some free content. I sometimes put the video on there just to get people's attention. It makes your profile stickier. So people land on the profile. It's not just text. There's stuff on there that they can look at. So if you've been on the call tonight, thank you, Colin, for your contribution. It's good to speak with you. We'll catch up next week. I'll drop you a note, set up a time for us to talk about perhaps using LinkedIn for business growth and some of the stuff we're both doing. If anyone watching this wants to get in touch with me, careercodex.com. Simon.Gray, that's Gray at careercodex.com. And that's it for tonight. Good night, and hope you enjoyed the blab.